Hi, it's Scott Allen, and over the next couple of weeks I'm going to be looking at what I think will be the first test team for the Lions and the threats they pose the Wallabies. Let's start with the scrum, and there's no doubt the Lions will be looking to dominate the Wallabies in this area. The last time the Lions toured to South Africa in 2009, the scrums played a major impact on the outcome of the matches. In the first test, Vickery started at tight head, and the Beast absolutely destroyed him. The Lions scrum completely disintegrated. They had no platform to attack from, and the South Africans kept picking up points from scrum penalties. The Lions also started that match with a small hooker, Lee Mears from England, and that didn't help their scrummaging. As a result, the Box got on top and dominated the first half. Early in the second half, the Lions brought on Adam Jones and Matthew Rees from Wales, and that literally changed the match. The Lions started dominating at scrum time, and as a result were the dominant team in the second half. In the second test with Jones starting at tight head, the Lions were again dominant until he went off injured. Warren Gatland and Graham Roundtree were the forwards coaches on that tour, and they won't have forgotten the impact that Jones had. I think they'll be looking to get dominance early, and so they'll start with Jones at tight head for the first test in Brisbane. He's also had a very good track record against the Wallabies, and on last year's tour of Australia, the Welsh scrum gave the Wallabies a lot of trouble. In particular, Jones has always gone well against Ben Robinson. Even though Robinson was just coming back to form in 2012, if we look back to 2008 when Robinson was considered the best loosehead in the world, Jones still got the better of him more often than not. It's because he packs so low as a tight head that he gives Robinson difficulty. That makes it very hard for Robinson to get underneath him so that he can lift him up and destabilise him. Here's an example from last year's tour. And then an example with Ben Alexander at loosehead. Robinson's come back to form in 2013, but he'll still have his hands full with Jones. The area Jones doesn't contribute well is around the field. He's slow, not very mobile, and his work rate is pretty poor. He hits some rucks, but as you can see, he's pretty ineffective. The Lions will be prepared to sacrifice that mobility and work rate around the park for his scrummaging capability. Now to hooker, where I expect the Lions will go with Richard Hibbard from Wales, particularly for his combination with Adam Jones in the scrum. He's a reasonable line-out thrower, but not exceptional. Hartley, coming off the bench, is a better line-out thrower. Hibbard's quite good around the field and adds a fair bit in terms of physicality. It's an area where I think the Wallabies have an advantage with Stephen Moore. The biggest threat from the Lions scrum will come from loosehead, where I expect they'll start with Cian Healy from Ireland. Healy's an attacking loosehead. You can see him here giving Dan Cole from England grief. He's also had it all over Ben Alexander when Ireland have played the Wallabies, particularly in the 2011 Rugby World Cup. You can see an example here. He gets down underneath Alexander, and Alexander's in a really weak position and can't resist the force. In that particular match, the Irish scrum dominated the Wallabies, and it set the platform for the Irish to cause a major upset. Regardless of who the Wallabies start at tight head against Healy, I think the Lions will have a major advantage on that side of the scrum. Personally, I prefer to see James Slipper start at tight head for the Wallabies, but he's had trouble with Healy as well. Whilst Adam Jones doesn't offer much around the field, Healy is the opposite. He's a good tackler, a good ball runner, and has a very high work rate. Regardless of who the Wallabies use at tight head, they're going to have to get very low at scrum time to keep Healy from getting underneath them and disrupting them. Whilst Dan Palmer may be the best tight head we've got, I don't think he's that far ahead of James Slipper based on the evidence of the last couple of months. However, I still expect Robbie Deans will start with Ben Alexander, with James Slipper on the bench. Whoever they choose, I expect the Wallaby scrum is going to be under pressure. I expect that the reserve hooker for the Lions will be Dylan Hartley from England. Whilst Tom Youngs from England has taken his starting spot and is in the squad, he's a small guy with not a lot of scrummaging experience. Hartley's also probably the best line-out thrower the Lions have in their squad. I expect the reserve props will be Gethin Jenkins from Wales to cover loosehead and Dan Cole from England to cover tight head. Whilst Cole's a decent scrummager, Ben Robinson hasn't had too much trouble with him in the past. He's the opposite of what Adam Jones is. He's quite good around the park and has a good high work rate. There is an argument that you'd start Gethin Jenkins at loosehead, so you keep an all-Welsh front row for the combination. He's a good scrummager, as you can see here against Dan Cole earlier in the year. But as I say, I think Cian Healy's more attacking. Jenkins is also pretty good around the park and has a lot of experience. So when he does come on in to replace Healy, they're not going to lose much. Overall, I think the Lions have got a pretty decent advantage in the front row. although Stephen Moore is definitely the best hooker out of both squads. It's going to be a tough battle for the Wallabies. In part 2 of the series, I'm going to look at the Lions' locks, their line out, and the threats they pose for the Wallabies.